Hello, I'm Jo Faustgen. Today I would like to bring you this webinar on the dynamics of family and the dysfunctions that can happen in families and possibly what you could do about it. And there will be the philosophies in here of Dr. Alfred Adler, Dr. Rudolf Dreikurs, as well as the philosophy of family therapy, the strategic family therapy that is put forward by J. Haley. And so this is well documented over time. So let's get started. The objectives today, we're going to be looking at some characteristics of the ideal family that we all want, as well as some different types of family dysfunction, 6 different ones. There's probably many more, but we're going to stay with 6 and explore some possible ways to change that dynamic and talk about change as growth. Families are so complex because they're made up of individual people with individual characteristics, so much different from each other. So we like to dress differently, we like to wear our hair differently, we like to communicate differently. Some are shy, some are more boisterous, and some are very private. Some are very caring, some are not very caring. It's amazing the differences that are in families because of the differences in the individuals. And that makes complexity. And so let's look at this ideal family, this one that we would always, we all want. So, wouldn't it be wonderful if we all got together and we had discussions together and everybody was respectful to each other, and we were accepting of the fact that everybody's different, and we took responsibility for our actions, and families were guided by parents who were very loving and caring, and we were all working on solving our problems individually as well as a family, each person going toward their actualization as a person and learning from their mistakes, learning from each other. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the roles in families were pretty well defined and yet flexible, and that the rules were defined and there was consequences that were fair for everybody. Nobody felt that they were put down by anybody else. There's no threats in this type of family. And there's what we would call social interests. In other words, people are caring about each other, they have empathy, they are sensitive to each other, they're accepting of each other. People are not arguing back and forth and yelling obscenities at each other, things like this, but they're bonding. Wouldn't it be wonderful if our family was this ideal family? But our families are not always that way. And so we need to be able to look at what are the positives that I do have in my family. I want you to look at this as well as look at your own family. Take a minute to jot down the positives that you do have in your family, because I want you to remember those as we go through the dysfunctions. Everybody's going to have some dysfunction, some more than others, and yet there's good in each family. I fully believe that. And I think it's very important for all of us to find that positive, because sometimes we lose sight of it when we look at all of the dysfunction. So take a minute to jot those things down. What is good about your family? And so as we look at the imperfections, we, look at the fact that, okay, all of us are imperfect. Every single individual in the family is imperfect. And so that makes imperfection in families. Okay, so you do have arguing. You do have people that feel left out. And then yet there are times when maybe we can let those go and we can sit down and eat together. That's when it feels a little bit more bonding. Okay, we can let those things go. And so let's look at the dysfunctions. We've got 6 here to look at. The Unmeshed, Disengaged, Alcoholic, the Dominating one, the Triangulating one, and the one that's oriented toward conflict. So let's take the hardest one first, which is the Unmeshed. This one is where they have their nose in everybody's business, okay? And for some people that feels close. Other people, it feels very disrespectful. And so we look at how can we look at this? How can we identify what's going on here? It's kind of confusing. It's complex. This is the most complex one that I've got. So if you just hang in there with me, maybe we can go through this together. So the wife seems to be the center in this family. And the husband is kind of on the side. She doesn't have too much connection with him, but she is very connected to everybody else, especially child B. Now, these are adult children, let's pretend. Okay, we can imagine all kinds of scenarios, but this is the first scenario we're going to imagine. Okay, so she's very connected to child B, who is very connected to child A, who is also very connected to the husband. Okay, this child really wants to make the husband feel loved, the dad feel loved. The wife doesn't feel very connected to the child, however, child A, because she seems to be overly connected to her husband. Okay, so this is one loop that we've got going on. Okay, got another loop, the green loop. And so the wife is connected to her mother, and she is continually talking about what the husband is doing wrong. Well, he never helps me around the house, and he's always saying this, and he's sleeping too much, and da da da. And so the wife is very connected also to child C, who is connected to child D, and who is connected to grandma, which is wife's mom. So you got this loop going on. Wife is not very connected to child D, and don't know why, but that's what's happening. And so as we look at this, the dysfunction, keep in mind, is where everybody's talking about everybody else behind their back. And some people prefer to keep things more private. I don't know if you know anybody who wants to keep things private within the family, but there are people who feel that way. And if there's anything good that they want to share with somebody, they want to be able to share it. And so sometimes we need to respect that privacy. But if they're talking in a negative way, do you know what this person does? And what's the matter with that person? It becomes judgmental, becomes critical. It becomes that there's coalitions kind of attacking each other and fighting against each other. And then you lose the boundaries that are important in families. You lose the boundaries of, I don't have to tell everybody everything. And you lose the privacy. And this can become very, almost toxic for some families. Let's look at another scenario of enmeshed. Stay with me, please. Okay, here the man and the woman are not married. Maybe you're just living together. But everybody other than the man outside of the woman is her family. And so she's very connected to one of her siblings. She's very connected to sibling C, not much to D, and she's connected to the aunt. Okay, again, not much connection to the man. But the woman is talking to sibling B about, do you know what he said to me? Do you know what's going on in this family? And sibling B is talking to the mom's mom and the woman's mom, and then getting back to this man. And so there's this, again, this dynamic that's pretty negative. So it's like she said this and he said that, and what's the matter with her? And I can't understand this system. It's just so awful and so icky. And the woman's mom is getting back to the man and saying, you can't treat my daughter like that. What's the matter with you? You really are a jerk. And that certainly doesn't help. And the aunt doesn't want to talk to the man because she hears all the negatives. So where's the man going to go? Who's the man going to talk to for support? Well, somebody outside the family, this family anyway. So he might go to his family and start a whole nother loop, whole nother negative loop. Do you know what's going on in this family over here? And I just can't talk to anybody. I can't talk to my wife about anything, that stuff. And so you got two families that are kind of warring at each other, just don't like each other. And how are you going to get together for holidays when that happens, right? Okay. So The man also might be tempted to start talking to his guy friends at the bar and get into drinking too much and come home drunk, and that causes another whole problem. And so you look at all the possibilities of what can happen here, because everybody's got their nose in everybody else's business, and not in a good way. Okay, where's the privacy? Where's the boundaries? Practically is none. Okay. The man is also likely to have an affair because he doesn't feel loved by anybody in this family. So look at this. This can be very toxic too. Again, very complex. Here's the next one, disengaged family. Okay, so the dad's off doing his thing at his job. The mom is off working at her job. And child A kind of gets lost in the system, doesn't feel very connected to anybody in the family, and just kind of feels like he or she has to pull up his bootstraps and just, you know, I don't have to feel, I can just do what I have to do. And so it becomes more kind of stoic. Okay. And child B, though, wants to go and be very sociable. And so that's where child B gets his or her feelings of feeling loved, okay, outside of the system and the social system. Child C, however, sorry, I'm getting confused. Child C is going back into the system looking for love and is not finding it because nobody's there to give that person love. That person can be ending up to be lonely, depressed, and then you've got nobody that seems too interested in you. And that's a sad system, a really sad system. Then you've got another very complex system, which is the alcoholic system. You've got the alcoholic in the middle. Everything kind of centers around this person, whether they realize it or not, okay? And so you've got the enabler. Somewhere there's an enabler, and this enabler might be confronting the alcoholic, maybe not. But if there's confrontation, there can be a lot of conflict. The alcoholic may want to go into treatment. If that person does, it may work, it may not. Sometimes I've seen alcoholics go into treatment, 5, 10 times, and it doesn't seem to might keep for a while, but not forever. Sometimes it works right away, and that's a blessing when that happens. And so that enabler is caught. Sometimes it's a spouse or a partner. An enabler is caught. Do I leave the system? Do I stay in the system? If that person stays in the system, it can be an enabling system. And so in the system, there is oftentimes a mascot. Everybody loves a mascot. Everybody wants to make that person feel loved and feel like everything's okay. But then there's also a scapegoat, somebody who is blamed for the system. And you don't want to necessarily blame the alcoholic because there's too much conflict with that. So there's another scapegoat in the system. And then there's the isolator, the one that doesn't want to be involved in the system because it's too conflicted, it's too messy, doesn't know where to go. And so this person hides. And then there's the hero. This person is, a responsible person, maybe very successful in school or in the work world, and very responsible, helps everybody out. Everybody in the system kind of looks to this person for help and support and love and care. And the hero may or may not be able to do anything about it because maybe that's just the way it is. So this can be a very difficult system as well. And it's very common. There's another one called the Domination System, where sometimes it could be the dad, sometimes it could be the mom. I just picked the dad out at random here. So if the dad is kind of superioristic and demanding, and he wants everybody to do what he wants them to do, and he's micromanaging everybody, you should do this, you should do it on my timetable, and if you don't do it this way, then you're wrong, and you got to change, da, 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 da. So this becomes very difficult. This becomes a very difficult system because it's hard to get out of unless the children fly away and do their own thing. Then the mom is stuck with the dad. And then they come to couples therapy because they don't understand why they can't get along together. Then there's the triangulated system. So often I see this in a divorce system where the dad is connecting with the child, the mom is connecting with the child, but sometimes there's an over-connection on each side and they're trying to vie for the child's affection. And so the mom is buying gifts and doing things, and the dad is buying gifts and doing things with the child. There's very little connection between the mom and the dad, but their common ground is the child. And the child sometimes feels stuck in the middle and sometimes feels like, you know, they're being pulled apart by the two warring systems. It can almost feel like a warring system sometimes. And the child also can feel entitled because everybody's giving them things. Okay, so this is a very difficult system, especially if there is abuse between the mom and the dad. It can either be emotional, it can be physical, it can be verbal. And so if that's continuing, or even if there is a restraining order and there's a little communication between them, and then there also might be a difference in the way that the mom and the dad do their discipline for the child. And so maybe one is very strict, maybe one is very lenient, and the child is stuck between the two. Of course, the child is going to lean more toward the one who's more lenient. And so again, the child is going to feel more entitled. And there can be just a lot of different personality conflicts in here. Here's another big problem, the conflicted system. It can be between just a man and a woman. Okay, so they have lots of arguing, and you've got cursing and swearing, and could be in front of the kids and maybe not. Whatever it is, it's a bad power system. And the second one, you've got one that's very intense and demanding of the other person. You're not helping me enough. The other person goes away. The other person can either go away in the other room, or they can sleep too much, or they can go outside of the system. They can be with their own friends. The person goes away because this person is too intense. Okay. Then you've got number 3. You've got the 2 children who are ganging up on the parents, and it's an attack and defend type of system, and it's not a good one. Okay. Then you've got number 4, where they're all attacking each other, and they've each got their own target that they're attacking. Okay. Husband attacking the wife, attacking the grandparent, who's attacking the aunt and the child and the husband. It's a bad system. Okay. Now, these are all difficulties that we can have even within not very dysfunctional families, but the conflict can be there. So how do you fix a dysfunctional family? Well, I would say one change at a time. The best and the gold standard would be family therapy. And a good family therapist would be able to observe the family and kind of understand what's going on, even if there's a facade in one person, even if there's loopholes that aren't seen by the family. This third person might be a very good objective person who can say, okay, first, let's get to know you a little bit. Tell me a little bit about you. Tell me what you like about the family. Is there anything good you see in the family? And so that's an important thing to pull out first. What's positive about the family? And then what are your goals for the family, for each one? Kind of go around and say, what would your goal be for the family? What would your goal be for this individual? What would you like to see? And then after that, you can start, the family therapist can identify what are the positives? What are the problems? What are the problem areas? Are there power struggles? Is there a need for respective differences in the family? Is there a need to problem solve a certain problem? Is there a need to find cooperation? Is there a need to acknowledge each person in the family. And even if there isn't a lot of accomplishment, can you find a way to acknowledge the effort that the person is taking? And the next step might be couples therapy that could be taken. Or it might be not a next step, but it might be the first step that you choose to take. And oftentimes it's one person that asks the other person to come into therapy. And unfortunately, sometimes they wait so long that the couple is ready to break up. And let's say, well, let's try this as a last ditch effort. What if they had come earlier? It could have solved some problems. But in couples therapy, when I do couples therapy, I try to be very respectful of each person. Each person has positives about them. Each person has things that can be used to help the system, as well as each person in that couple maybe has some things that they'd like to work on. So you ask for, what are your goals for couples therapy? Is there a need for respective differences even between the couple? And the example I use often is the dishwasher. Everybody has a different way to load the dishwasher, and that's okay. Can there be an okay way that is different from somebody else, and it's just different, but it still gets the dishes washed? Okay. It's amazing how many little problems can be big problems, can become big problems and big conflicts, and they don't need to be. And that's what can happen in a dysfunctional couple. And maybe one person needs to be in individual therapy. Maybe there's some issues with anxiety or depression that's causing problems in the family or the couple. And a lot can be gained in individual therapy as well. And then go back to the couples therapy, go back to the family therapy, and say, I've been working on my anxiety, I've been working on my anger, I've been working on this, and I can bring a better person back into the system. So that if one person changes, the whole system needs to change. The dynamic changes if one person changes. I want you to keep that in mind. It's an important thing. It's an interesting thing, because the dynamic has to change if one person changes. Okay, think about that. And so let's go back to some of these systems and let's say, if one person changes, what happens? And so let's take the conflict of number 2 couple. And let's say there's this intensity coming from this one person, this other person is going away, not connecting. But what if that person says, I'm not happy with this system. I would like to work on this relationship. I would like you to be less intense. Can you be less intense with me? And maybe I'll be willing to talk with you. And then the other person calms down a little bit, and the other person is willing to talk. The other person is willing to say, okay, let's talk. But each person is a little afraid. That's okay, but it's about connecting. Or maybe this person says, I'm not happy with this system. I'm going to be out of here if you don't go and get some help. So this person goes to individual therapy and says, my wife is going to leave me if I don't change, and I don't know what's the matter. But the therapist says, okay, what does your wife want you to change? Well, my wife says, I'm too angry, I'm too intense. Okay, let's work on that. Okay, that can be worked on. Then that person can go back, maybe less intense, and they can work together better. How about scenario number 3 here? What if the parents came to the children and said, no, let's do this differently. Let's do a better system where, we're all respectful of each other. Are you willing to work with us so that we don't argue so much? I don't like the arguing. Do you like the arguing? Well, no. Okay, so let's do it differently. Let's talk, and we'll try to listen to your arguments, but we also need you to be respectful. No cursing or swearing at us. And just say what you want, say how you feel, and let's just talk about it. So if the parents are willing to do that, and get out of their attack and defense as well, it might help. Okay. Let's look at the triangulated system. What if the mom and the dad are willing to talk a little bit, even if there's been abuse between them? What if there's a little bit of, okay, this is what we're doing in our house. Maybe let's talk about maybe the dad and the mom have remarried. Okay, so there's a whole nother system. And the dad and his new wife and the mom and her new husband are talking about let's try to do this better for the child. Let's have the same approximate family rules and regulations and consequences. Let's try to do it the same so the child doesn't feel like he or she is being pulled apart by the two systems. Okay, this requires a lot of cooperation. It requires a lot of, thinking about the child and what is best for the child. And then let's talk about the alcoholic system. What if the enabler, yes, encourages that person to go to AA or go into treatment because this person's come home drunk too many times? And so maybe this is going to work. Maybe it's not. But that person can try. Okay. And what if that person comes home and it is a better system? Then you can celebrate that. That's great. What if that person doesn't change? What if the person changes just for a short time? And so maybe the hero in the system can get everybody together and maybe you can support each other. Can you support and care and love about each other, even though this person is still stuck in the alcohol, stuck in that dependency system? There can still be positives that you find in this system. And then this is about growth and change. You can have change without growth, but you can't have growth without change. And so as we change from different things in our stages of individuality, but we also change, we see changes in the system of the family. And as we see that, we look at the fact that maybe there's risk that needs to be taken in order to change. There might be a way to adapt to the change. There's always a way to adapt to that. And learning from your mistakes so that growth can happen. One person can make a difference. One person can help it to grow. And so this webinar, we've taken time to explore that wonderful thing called the ideal family that we would all like, but also to think about the positives that we do have. Even if there is dysfunction in our family, there's still positives in our family. Find them, because if you're having a dysfunction, you need to remember that there are positives about each person. There's positives about the family somewhere. Find them, remember them. We've explored some ways to change and some ways to talk about change as growth. And so I've just given you a little bit of food for thought. And I'm hoping that this has been helpful for you, insightful for you, as you think about your family, think about what you'd like to have for your family, and to be able to find those blessings that you do have in your family. And I thank you for your attention, and blessings to you and your family. Thank you.